Good morning or afternoon, buenas tardes, depending on where part of the country you are in. We have an amazing list of speakers with incredible backgrounds and expertise in this area that is so vital and so needed in this day and age, particularly with the pandemic that we have all been having to be remote, and we do more Zooms than ever. So there's one more, but to make the inspiring opening session, I have the honor to welcome to open this for us, Dr. Carmen Ayala, the first woman and Latina in over 100 years as a state superintendent of the great state of Illinois, my home state, and a dear friend for many, many years. So a little bit about Dr. Ayala, in her appointment, which became effective in March of 2019. She, before that, has been in the trenches, various roles, various capacities. And the last one was as the superintendent for the Berwyn North School District 98. And where she did an amazing job at turning around lower performing schools and also doing what many say can't be done. You know, represent diversity, represent the students and what, you know, where they come from, you know, and it is possible. And she not only has done it in her districts that she's been a leader, she did it right off the bat as a state superintendent leader. So there's no way anyone can say it can't happen. Sí se puede, como se dice. So before that, she's had multiple roles in her capacity as an educator, passion in her field, language, culture, all of those things are so important and near and dear to her heart. Has co-authored a book on this cultural responsiveness and brought a lot of that new and innovation to the table. So with no further ado, I would introduce my dear friend and leader of our great state of Illinois, and sets the bar for the whole country. So welcome, Dr. Ayala.
Thank you, Caroline. So good to see you, and thank you for the invitation to just make a few opening remarks. Hello, everyone. I'm just so happy to have the opportunity to open such an important discussion. Jobs related to computer science and the tech workforce are among the fastest growing and highest paying in the nation. COVID-19 even increased our reliance on technology and showed how vital these careers will continue to be as virtual work, virtual learning, and virtual connecting remain even after the pandemic. But as you know, Latino students and workers remain underrepresented across these high-paying and in-demand computer science careers in the US. While Hispanics make up 19% of the US population, we make up just over 8% of students who earned a computer science degree. Why? It's not just about access to computer science, it's also about math. Math is the gateway to computer science because calculus is a prerequisite for computer science majors in college. So when we ask ourselves how to get more Latinos into computer science, we're really asking, how do we get more Latinos to pass calculus by high school graduation? And how do we do that? Let's start at the beginning. In Illinois, all kindergarten teachers administer an observational assessment called the Kindergarten Individual Development Survey, or KIDS. By day one of kindergarten, we already see gaps in early math skills between Hispanic students and their white peers. Only 22% of Hispanic kindergartners in Illinois demonstrated the early math skills that would indicate that they have received high-quality preschool, compared to 42% of white kindergartners. Now, to close these gaps, we need to invest in high-quality early childhood education, which is exactly what we've done here in Illinois. And we've started to see those numbers increase. We're also encouraging our early childhood and kindergarten teachers to embrace developmentally appropriate instruction. We call it play-based learning. So students can learn those early skills like sorting, measuring, and counting in a way that's fun and explorative and engages their natural curiosity. The next indicator that students are on track to passing calculus by graduation is whether they pass Algebra 1 by 8th grade. The normal sequence of higher level math courses goes something like this: Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus, than calculus. So if students don't pass Algebra 1 by 8th grade, then they likely won't have the time in the next 4 years to reach calculus. While the percentage of Hispanic students passing Algebra 1 by 8th grade had been steadily rising before the pandemic, this past year, that rate fell to only 20%, which indicates an increase in failing grades due to remote learning during the pandemic. The remote learning environment during the pandemic really took a toll on our students, especially in math, especially in our younger grades, and most especially among our Latino students. The overlap between our Hispanic students and our English learners in Illinois is high. And our schools were not able last year to provide English learners and their families enough of the support that was needed to stay on track and engage virtually. Strengthening our instruction for these students, especially in math, will be more important than ever. Now, that's why Illinois is launching a high-impact tutoring program this year to provide targeted supports to students in order to get them back on track. We've also adopted culturally responsive teaching and leading standards this past spring. These standards apply to educator preparation programs, and they will prepare our aspiring teachers of all grades and subjects to better understand and engage students of all backgrounds. Culturally responsive teaching makes learning relevant to students' lives and community contexts. I implemented culturally responsive teaching as a district superintendent with a largely Hispanic student population serving a high proportion of English learners. With culturally responsive teaching and leading and a rigorous curriculum, we saw double-digit increases in math. It works. So now imagine we're in high school. Let's say we're a Latino student who is on track to pass calculus by graduation. How do we get our first introduction to computer science to explore whether that major and that career might be a good fit? Nationally, fewer than half of high schools in the United States offer computer science courses, and Latino students are significantly less likely to have access to computer science courses in their schools. Illinois tackled this issue head-on this past spring with new groundbreaking legislation that now requires all high schools to provide all students the opportunity to take a computer science course. The law also requires that all students receive instruction in computer literacy as a graduation requirement. To support these two requirements, the Illinois State Board of Education convened a stakeholder group to develop computer science learning standards. And I'd like to thank our conference organizers, Caroline, especially you, for participating in that work. Illinois is also a national leader in expanding access to advanced placement courses. AP courses called Computer Science Principles is offered. Students who take this course in high school are more than 3 times likely to major in computer science in college than similar students who don't take this course. They're also twice as likely to take the more programming-focused AP course, Computer Science A. Now, since 2018, we have doubled the number of Latino students who have taken the AP exam for Computer Science Principles. And of course, hand in hand with expanding access to computer science is expanding access to computers and high-speed internet in schools and in students' homes. If there was one silver lining at all to this pandemic, it's that it gave us the funding and the impetus to finally close digital divides. We have invested $130 million in devices and connectivity in order to make Illinois a one-to-one technology environment. But you know, even with all these investments and policies in place, our students will not have the opportunity to succeed in math and computer science careers if we don't have enough math and computer science teachers in our schools. Illinois continues to remove barriers to entering the teaching profession and continues to take strides towards increasing teacher diversity. But we need your help. Become a teacher, encourage your children, encourage your students, invite your friends to become teachers. It's the most incredible and rewarding and fulfilling career. And the starting salary in places like Chicago is $60,000. Plus, teachers can qualify for federal loan forgiveness. With a master's degree, teachers can be earning six figures after 15 years of service, plus a pension, not to mention the joy knowing that every day you are having an impact and you are changing the world. So I want to thank you again for letting me share about how Illinois is breaking down barriers for Latinos in computer science. And I hope that you take full advantage of what this summit has to offer. Adelante.
Muchísimas gracias for this great opening. And yes, you touch our hearts and our souls, and much work to be done, but stronger together, sí se puede. It's been our continuing message across the day, and a movement that we're creating. And I'm going to turn it over to our moderator today, Dr. Joseph Carroll-Miranda, who comes from the great Puerto Rico country that has brought so much to our nation. And now we're building bridges and making connections with a great panel that he'll be introducing. So Dr. Joseph, and also a member of our LULAC team in Illinois as well, and with our movement for CS for LatinX. So Dr. Joseph Carroll-Miranda, please take over.
Buenas tardes, if it's good afternoon, if it's in the afternoon, good morning, buenos días, if it's in the morning, and for those who might be even a good evening, but buenas noches. It's with extreme pleasure and honor to be the moderator today of our panel, a fireside talk called CS para Todos, an equity movimiento for LatinX. Hopefully, Dr. Allison Scott will join us shortly, who is the head of the CEO of the Kapor Center, an organization with a mission to increase racial diversity in tech and entrepreneurship. We believe that the tech workforce and leadership reflects the diversity of the country. Innovation will be strengthened, and tech can be used to close longstanding gaps across sectors. Also, we have with us Dr. Patricia Ordóñez, a esteemed friend and colleague, who was the first Latina to graduate with a PhD from the College of Engineering and Information Technology at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and the first female associate professor to earn tenure in the Computer Science Department at the University of Puerto Rico. She is a former National Science Foundation Graduate Researcher Fellow, and she is serving as a General Chair at the 2022 Tapia Celebration of Diversity in Computing Conference, as well as the co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Council of the Association of Computing Machinery, ACM. She's also the recipient of the Great Minds in STEM 2021 HANAC Award in Education, and she's passionate about creating a more inclusive culture in computing and STEM, and about bridging the digital and data divide in global healthcare and education. Also, I have the great pleasure to introduce whom I already know, you all know, Caroline Sanchez Crozier, CEO and owner of CSE Consulting Group. Burr Ridge launched the company 33 years ago. CSE's initial partner was Apple to support CPS educators with technology. Today, CSE is an experienced IT service provider working with schools, nonprofits, and small businesses to manage their technology infrastructure with Cisco engineers. In 2019, she founded LatinX, Digital Leaders Now, a nonprofit organization for digital equity, which is the new civil rights, especially during COVID-19. Ms. Crozier is actively engaged in addressing the systemic inequities that have been exacerbated by the current pandemic. Caroline's other board activities include CS for Illinois and currently leads ECEP's CS Strategic Plan, Equity, and Advocacy Work Group. Also, I have the pleasure to present Dr. Chris Hoadley, who is a faculty member in the Educational Communication and Technology program, the program in Digital Media Design for Learning, and the program on Games for Learning at New York University. He has over 40 years of experience designing and building educational technology, and has researched connections between technology, learning, and collaboration for over 30 years. His research focuses on collaborative technologies, computer support to support learning, CSCL, and the design-based research methods, a term he coined in the late 90s. He previously taught at Stanford University, Mills College, Penn State University in Education, Computer Science, and Information Sciences, and has authored and co-authored over 100 peer-reviewed publications and presentations. And as for myself, I'm a professor at the Graduate Studies of the Department, Graduate Studies Department at the College of Education at the University of Puerto Rico, and also director of the CS for LatinX initiative of LatinX Digital Leaders Now. And without further ado, we would want to have like a very homely, hogareño conversation with everybody here in the panelists. And I'll throw it out. The first question that everybody to answer is, why do you all think CS para Todos, an equity movimiento for Latino, is necessary? So we can begin with Patricia, Chris, and Caroline.
All at the same time? I'll start first in terms of, I think the biggest reason is we have so few Latinas in computing, and especially as like the higher you go, the less you see, people who are Latinas in particular. So my focus is really getting Latinas in, because I think our culture actually holds Latinas back. You know, putting a lot of responsibility on the home, putting a lot of responsibility and you know, just reinforcing negative stereotypes. They get the negative stereotypes from the women. They get the negative stereotypes of you who should be home taking care of your children, kind of thing. And not, you know, your purpose is to have children and a family. and so those things, you know, there's no better career, I think, if you have children than to be in computing. So we have to kind of change the stereotype and make it be so that Latinas can not only be at home if they want to be, but they can also be leaders, and they can be, you know, in computing yeah, I think that's my main reason why it has to be para todos.
Let me jump in, segue. I agree. As a Latina, as one that, you know, I reference myself. I didn't realize until people mentioned you're a unicorn. You've been in technology for 30-some years. You're a 1%er. And we shouldn't be 1%ers. You should be reflecting the percentage that we are in our country, the great wealth of talent and potential. And yes, we can have children. Yes, we can be homemakers. But yes, we can also have this as a future that we can contribute to our country. So I'm going to say, because we have to be intentional about it. We cannot accept the status quo. And the only way to do it is be active, take action, and build partnerships like the ones we're building today.
And I'll add, there's a couple of reasons I think that equity in computer science is especially important. So we know that we have problems with equity in a lot of fields, both in the education sector and in jobs afterwards. But computer science is especially important for several reasons. One is we really have to understand that with the increasing reach of technology in our society, it's a program or be programmed situation, that technology has a lot of power to shift how we think and communicate and work and live with each other. And so having everybody represented in that particular activity is especially important. We know that computer science is unfortunately the only STEM discipline where equity is getting worse. So compared to other fields in math, engineering, science, computer science is particularly at risk right now. And I would say the equity problem in computer science is actually the STEM crisis we're facing right now. And the other thing that I think is really important, and it's sort of hard to see, but there's a need for our technology to be robust for people in a way that we can only achieve if we bring everybody to help build it. And so there was a famous story a few years back about how iPhones would crash and brick themselves if you used a certain character from South Indian language on the phone. And that's the kind of programming error that has real world impact that's a lot more avoidable if you have people with different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different racial backgrounds, also different language backgrounds participating in building the technology we use. And so those are 3 reasons I think this is especially important.
Thank you. Could you all please just kindly provide a brief example of what your work or organization is doing right now to increase Latinx representation in computer science education or the tech workforce?
Let me start with, I just want to add to Christopher's thing, because, you know, one of the things that I think is so ironic is that now we do have characters that are, you know, Chinese and Japanese, because, you know, it was a matter of just expanding the size. Like, that was literally something that was just so US centric, and adding letters. And yet when they did add those letters, they didn't take into consideration Native American characters, which to me also reflects a certain type of colonialism, if you might say, because it was more important to reach globally than actually reach a certain community in our society. And even though a lot of what this revolution started in the US. Now, what I'm doing, so there's several efforts, but I think the one I'm most, you know, really focusing on Latinas is trying to do a women in data science Puerto Rico, and trying to build something across the island right now to focus on that, just because like I said, it just seems like academia is not doing enough. And so that's one. And then focusing, there's another initiative right now that I'm trying to get started, which is focusing on poor women. Because prior to being in education, I used to work for a software company that, you know, provided the software for Section 8. And that's a whole community where there's a lot of single women, you know, head of household. 91% of the households with children are women. And so that's a whole community that has no access to education. And so that's another initiative that I'm trying to work on. I'm not mentioning the ones you're doing, Joseph, so you have to do those. Or that we're doing together. That's for you.
If we have time, we'll do that, but I would love to hear both Caroline and
Sure, let me jump in. So what we're doing is in Illinois and very, I think, innovative, is to have this collaboration with what both Patricia and Joseph are doing in Puerto Rico. So first, personally, you know, I haven't been in this space with Apple for my first years as an entrepreneur, now 33 years later, working with Cisco, is that I've stepped down from an entrepreneur day to day to be really an advocate and actually an activist in the space, launching the LatinX Digital Leaders Now. And great to have people like Dr. Joseph Carroll-Miranda join us, the movement, and Dr. Patricia Ordonez, in specifically creating a movement. There's a lot of stuff going on already, but nothing is cohesive and collective to see the try to close the huge gaps in having our representation and building the pipeline. So the CS for Latinx, very intentionally movement where everybody is invited, allies from all walks of life that believe that equity is important. So we are engaging in alliances with not only in our home state of CS for Ayala, I already mentioned Puerto Rico, with ECEP. They work with many states across the country and with the CS for All. So we really have to come together because alone it cannot be done. And we're stronger that way. So being very intentional about engaging, not only to support the students, but to have the representation of the educators, of the leaders. And then looking for funding. There's funding from NSF grants. Many of you have had those experiences. We want to bring that to Illinois, partnering with the Illinois State Board of Education, as you saw that Dr. Ayala open up. There are lots of work to be done, and it cannot be done by only one group or another. And so a movement, a coalition building, what I've been doing my entire 30 years, besides an entrepreneur, is that we're now very intentionally focused on digital equity and computer science for all. So we invite everyone who's listening, and everybody's in the panel is already participating with us, because it's really, it's a real movement that's lifelong to reach those goals that we're going to stop at nothing to reach them.
I'm happy to jump in with what we've been working on. So because I'm an education professor, I'm focused on education sector. New York City has 1.1 million students in our public school system. And in 2015, the city committed to bringing computer science to all 1.1 million. Of that large number, which is bigger than the number of total students in more than half of US states, we have 40% or so of our kids who speak languages other than English in the home. And so our research is on trying to find ways to make sure that CS for All in New York City includes all of the emergent bilingual and multilingual learners that we have in our very diverse city, including not only Latinx kids or kids who speak Spanish, but also kids with other language backgrounds. And so our project is called Pilas CS, Ponte las Pilas, and it's pilascs.org. And we invite everybody to take a look at our resources. But our goal is helping the New York City Department of Education train its teachers in ways to use computer science, both to support language learners as they learn other school subjects, and to support language learners as they learn different languages. And so our project tries to use code as a bridge between the ways that people think and talk and communicate, whether it's in their home language, whether it's in English, whether it's in science, whether it's in language arts. And so we're trying very hard to find out what are the strategies that work best for teachers and how teachers can make sure that their classroom includes everybody's language background, whatever it is.
Thank you so much. Kind of like co-telling with what you just said, Christopher. I want to ask everybody: is what three things are important for that schools can do to increase the pipeline for underrepresented groups like women and Latinos to help close the gap in the tech field, computer science fields, whether in corporate or entrepreneurship or in the education sector? I know this is almost like a magic bullet approach, but with very practical, concrete efforts that you think that can take away the magic out of the bullet and just really just be very proactive and debunk the element of magic, although magic is really important in the work we do. So
I'll start with my three things, and definitely lots to do. But if I were to say this, is I keep using this word about being intentional. We have to be very intentional in recruiting and mentoring groups from the underrepresented groups of educators. And in our particular case with Latinos, Latinas, too often people say, well, I offer it to everybody. Well, they have a full plate. There's a lot going on in their classroom. There's a lot going on in their home. We have to come in and be very personal and very intentional in inviting them to the table to be part of this movement and make this as a support and a benefit to not only for the students, because we're all about the students as well, but for their own careers, for their own mental health. They're facing a lot of challenges today with this pandemic. So it's when they say, well, we invite and they don't show up or they don't enroll, we need to know, we need to figure out what to do differently. So being intentional. Number two is bring funding and be very specific in getting professional development with lots of ongoing support for them. One thing is to bring them to the table. It's another is see it through that at the end of the day, they're empowered, they're elevated, they're supported. And too often I've heard in my 30 years working with schools as a ed tech consultant, they're like, well, we'll give them this ed tool. They'll figure it out, this tech tool. They'll figure it out. They're teachers. It is so wrong. That is not the case. That's not the way we treat professionals. That's not the way, when I was a CPA growing up and now a converted educator in tech, we had lots of training, lots of support. Educators need the best and deserve the best. So be supportive, value their profession and lift them up. And then the third is have sustainable initiatives. It cannot be just one shot deal. It takes hard work to start something. It takes a monumental task, and then for it to end because a grant ended, that's just not right. And it's a lot of wasted effort in human capital. So be very intentional to have sustainable initiatives, to have collaboration, and to look at research and best practices. And that's why we're in this space today, to invite people, to let people know. But LULAC is a new day for LULAC. It's a new day for this to be a civil rights issue. And we're just getting started. So join us.
Patricia, Christopher, Patricia, whoever wants to jump in.
I'm gonna wait to see
I can
because
go
I've
next.
been doing
I
it.
can go
I'm going
next.
first now. Okay.
we can reverse our orders and
Yes.
scramble it up. And I feel like I wish I were able to better sit here just taking notes on what everybody else is saying. And I really appreciated what you just said, Caroline, about this being a civil rights issue. I really do think that for me, the three things that I would say probably the single most important is to stop treating computer science like it is advanced or specialized or an elective or only for certain kids who've gotten to their whatever point in the curriculum. You know, this is absolutely something that is required in modern life. It is transforming all of the school disciplines. If you go to graduate school in physics, you will be computing. If you go to graduate school in English literature, you may very well be doing digital humanities. And so the ways computer science is relevant to other school disciplines is as central as reading and writing or mathematics. And I think we need to start treating it like it is as essential at the K-12 level as people treat it in graduate school. So first thing is don't make it an extra for experts topic. Second thing is, I think it's really important to allow computer science to build on the knowledge that kids bring to school already. So we know that kids are gaming. We know that kids are participating in internet media. We know that kids often have technology that they like to keep on their person. And, you know, we often devalue that when the kids come in the school door. And so making sure that the kids are able to build connections between, you know, the world they inhabit and the computer science is also really important. And then the third thing I would say is just remembering that these computing skills aren't just something you learn so you can go work at Facebook or Google. These are things that prepare you for modern life. And in our project, we often ask what conversation is this code a part of? And so just remembering that in our communities, among the adults, among, you know, even the abuelas are using technology. How do we make this part of that conversation? And so helping the kids connect what they're doing with computing and computer science to not just their youth culture, but also to their larger community culture is really important.
So now I'll go. So part of me, I guess with AI, so I did do a lot of machine learning and AI, and I'm so happy that nowadays, like there's awareness, more awareness about the bias that exists in data sets and bias that exists in algorithms that specifically target either the poor or the elderly. And so I think that I'm going to take it one step further, is that we need to really educate the parents of the kids so that they understand the dangers for students. And you know, right now it just came out on Facebook, you know, the whole stuff that just happened right now with Facebook and the fact that, you know, some of these tech companies know that they're doing damage to children, but because of the profits, they're putting profits over that. So all these things tell me, like, it's so important to educate parents about dangers and also I think, like, including parents in activities that you do with children. Just because you know, we still want you know, that's one of the things that I love about Latino culture, the importance of La Familia. But what about if we use that importance of La Familia to pass coding on to the parents and the students? And then maybe we can even get these parents higher paying jobs, you know? And so that, you know, I think sometimes we forget about the adult learner and the need to, like, we really are going into a new century that is going to have a lot of automation. And you know, if the parents are going to need these skills as well as the children. And so one of the things that I think we should focus on is, you know, maybe doing, you know, coding with the family. You know, Joseph and I do initiatives, and I know that there's an initiative throughout the country called CS as Elementary. Start them young, start them with their parents, so the parents can also learn along the way. And I think that the more you do that, the other thing you can do while you're doing that is break biases. We have to break these stereotypes. We have to break these biases about Latinas not being in there. We can do that with the parents and the students. And, you know, what if we have a family code night, which is Mother's Night, right? So then they'll see all these women in computing, right? Wow, wonderful is that for our kids to start to see, hey, mom can do computing. So therefore, it is for everybody, right? And I just see too many of my friends, my female friends, that you know, they say to me all the time, no, I'm so bad at the computer. I'm so bad. That term, like, so if you have seen the latest Pixar, I think it was Luca, there was this voice in the head of that character called Bruno. And so the Bruno tells them all these negative thoughts, all the negative stuff, and they say, silencio, Bruno. So I think this is like a really great analogy, like teaching people also to say, to silence that thing that I can't do computing, because I really think a lot of it is mindset, because there's so many negative stereotypes towards Latinos and women, and getting them to silence that negative talk in the head that I can't do computing is really, really important.
Thank you. With LULAC being the oldest and largest civil rights organization for Latinos in both the US and Puerto Rico, what do you suggest for Latinx leaders like LULAC to do differently to raise awareness and engagement via coalition building so that more investments are made in Latino communities, schools, by public and private philanthropy?
Well, I think that I know LULAC has a huge opportunity to having that 90-year, almost 100-year history of civil rights. And what we need to do collectively is to change that perception of what Latinos are about, you know, what we do, what we don't do. And too often we get pigeonholed, you know, my entire life, you know, since I arrived from Mexico at age 8. It's like, oh, pobrecito, oh, tiene que aprender inglés, he has to learn English, oh, we can get her into this gifted program or that, whatever, until she learns English. And all the parents don't show up in the school because, you know, they don't care. All of these things that are just stereotypes, we need to change. And LULAC's message, and with this new innovation and technology committee, is volunteers, leaders, experts like myself, Dr. Carroll-Miranda, and all of you at the table, really have opened up this conversation and let our voices be heard. Don't speak for us. Don't say who we are and who we're not. Incorporate culture and language into the computer science, into the math, into all those things that, you know, when I was in school, you know, they never talked about me. They always looked at me like, oh, you're the one that lost at El Alamo, you know, so Los Alamos. So we can't be in those old buckets that don't work for us and never have. So that's what I say LULAC has, is that brand, that voice, that not only in politics, but in policy, in advocacy, and around the kitchen table and in churches. We represent all of them. So that's one. The second is to, and then the committee that I said, you know, we're all volunteers. All of you can be part of this movement. And then engage councils. Our councils are across the country, Puerto Rico, and bring in the new generation of LULAC members. You know, they helped me navigate through college when I was 15. I've been an activist volunteer for 30-some years throughout my entrepreneurship role. So engage more Latinos, call out all Latinos of all walks of life, young next generation Latinos, to participate, to be the leaders, to be the change agents. At the end of the day session, we're going to talk about, and we're going to have inspirational stories from change agents that are doing that very same thing. And last I can say about LULAC is that, you know, there is this trust factor, and LULAC can help address that. You know, we're very loyal, but also we don't trust just anyone to walk into our home. And so we need to open up those conversations and have LULAC help with that process, because too often we get the mixed messages from school leadership and others that, well, they don't care, parents don't care, students aren't interested, you know, they don't get excited, they don't say that. So our biggest, I would say, fault is that we're modest. We're modest in who we are and what we can do. And we need to show those voices very loud. And I was very quiet. I'm an introvert by nature, but I've come out of my shell because, it's my calling to be doing this. And there are many out there that have the same little voice inside that just has to come out. I'm tired of being told we're the sleeping giants. Well, enough of that. We've got to speak up and be loud and be heard in our own way. So that's, I think, what LULAC's opportunity is.
I wanted to add a little bit to that because I think that, those stereotypes, I think so many Latinos, the parents, the mother and the father are both working, sometimes more than one job. And it's just, that's why they're not showing up. It's not that they're lazy or not interested, it's that they can't. They're working hard. So that needs to change too, that stereotype.
Yeah, and I would say beyond, I really love the way you phrase it, Caroline, to sort of show the community that the community can be visible and strong in the way that this is one of the things that that people do, that computing is something that can be sort of brought out of, out of the closet and into the light as something that's part of culture. And I would just also say, for me, I think if I were to suggest one single thing for LULAC to do on a policy level, it would be to insist that computer science is for everybody. And so, as long as we treat it as something specialized, extra, optional, there will be plenty of people who are plenty of Brunos that we need to say silencio to try to discourage people from learning these things. And really, we don't want a single one of our kids to go through school and not learn some computer science, because ultimately it's not a nice to have. It's an essential part of education these days.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. I agree with that.
And we're about to more or less close and with our session. And before that, I would just love to speak from el corazón, una corazonada, like what words or message you want anybody seeing this, because this is being broadcast live, but it's also gonna be recorded, so it's gonna be here for posterity. So what words do you want to give in terms of inspiration and motivation and call to action? What would you tell the audience and make it a point that this is for the history? So
every time you're afraid to do something with technology, silencio Bruno.
There you go. There you go.
I guess my thing would be a lot of people try to define us as women, as Latinos. I think what you have to remember is don't let others define you. You need to define yourself. And that means that if people start giving you labels and they don't work for you, don't listen to them. Only believe a prediction if it empowers you.
And I would say, echoing with Dr. Doñez is saying about don't let anyone stop you from what you want to do, and be willing to take risks, get out of your comfort zone, and never give up. And that's usually what we have to do is, as a woman, as a Latina women, we too often get placed in this, pigeonhole to do certain things. Do not let them. And, I'm a perfect example of what is possible. So, si se puede, as our motto has been all along, and just be disruptive in a positive way. Do not accept the status quo. So that's what I would say. And I would say in that chat, put your email, put your name, join our movement, because we're calling a action here. A call to action is get multi-generations on board with this from every walk of life. So please join us.
And I'm gonna push the envelope a little bit further, just because I want to use the time to the max, and it's because this is called like creating a movimiento, right? So what words of advice, because all of you, your excellent work has contributed to growing a movimiento. So what would you tell somebody who's inspired by this fireside chat to how to begin, what to do in creating that movimiento?
I would say start with a small group. Just start to create a group for whatever you see is missing, and then invite people use it as an excuse to invite people that you want to get to know to come and talk to. Now that we have internet, it's really easy. And so you will get empowered. So if you know somebody that you would love to talk to and inspire, create a little group and say, would you come and talk to our group? And I think that if we all do that, we'll help one another.
I was going to say something like, don't do it alone. So yes, start a small group. Don't do it alone. There's a lot of us out there. And use the LULAC brand and infrastructure. You don't have to be beyond your time or your interest of getting engaged. There's un granito se puede, with a little bit of contribution. You keep adding it up and it becomes very, very powerful. So have your voice be heard. We can build up CS Movimiento LULAC councils. You know, it's very easy. Go to LULAC.org, start a charter, 13 people, little group, like Patricia said, and join this whole new movement of what LULAC is about, innovation, technology, CS. We can help you. Send your email, join us, and it's easy. Sí se puede.
And I would add one suggestion too that maybe helps with the don't go it alone suggestion, which is grown-ups often forget. It's really strange in American society how much time adults and children spend apart from each other, with the exception of those who work in schools. And so I would just say, even if you are not someone who works in the education sector, don't forget that some of the most open-minded people who have the most free time in your community are the youth. And they can be engaged in wonderful ways. And if you show up at a school and say, I have something that I'm interested in, I'm passionate about, whether or not you have time to volunteer at the school during the day, even if it's just showing up at a meeting at night or making an appointment with a principal or a teacher, like there's a lot of untapped human capital in schools, and people sort of think, oh, well, they're kids, they can't do anything, but that's just not true. And so I would encourage anybody who wants to try to build more of a movement to enlist the energy of the youth, because they are far less tired than I am, and they can get a lot done.
Definitely, most definitely. I think we have a few minutes to spare, and I would like to open to the audience. If there's any questions you would ask, you want to ask to anybody within the panel.
I see that there's a question about getting guest speakers to inspire. There is a session. I think we're going to close early to get ready for the next session, but you'll see the list at the end. The last session, the closing session, is speakers to inspire about STEM and technology and entrepreneurship. So yes, we read your mind, and we're definitely part of the movement is inspired to aspire, and that has to continue because those stories really matter. Tell them the stories in this venue and many other places, little groups, wherever you're at, have to be told. And so we're going to start with our ending session of Inspired to Aspire Change Agents, and hopefully you can join us as well. So with that, I've made your closing comments, Dr. Miranda.
Okay. Well, to close it up is I wanna you know, whoever knows me, and this is virtual, but if this were like a stage, I would so definitely like we'll be doing it so differently. But I'm gonna assume that I'm on a stage, and I would love to finish this how I would do it if I were on the stage. And I want to leave with a chant, and the chant is sí se puede porque sí es para todos. So sí se puede porque sí es para todos. Sí se puede porque sí es para
todos.
Sí se puede porque sí es para todos. So on that note, please follow the next sessions. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Caroline, Christopher, and Patricia, and everybody who has volunteered their time and work making this possible. all the tech support and all the anonymous people in tras bastidores that without you, this would never be possible. So muchas gracias. And I hope to see you in the other panels and sessions that are coming up.
Can we do a plug real quick?
Yes, of course.
All right, we're gonna do a plug for Joseph and I have a podcast. We're gonna end it with the name of that podcast. You ready, Joseph?
Yeah. It's sí es para todos.
Para todos.
Love it.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
El silencio, Bruno.
En silencio.
Silencio, Bruno, I like that. I'll be adopting that one. Bye-bye, everybody.